Good morning, everybody. Okay, so I've changed my talk a little bit because I realized with me speaking on the National Plant Conservation Strategy as well as citizen scientists, it's just too much to cover in a short period of time. So basically, SANBI, together with the Botanical Society of South Africa, has collaborated with various botanists and university associates to come up with the National Plant Conservation Strategy for South Africa. Just a brief overview of our South African flora. We have just under 20,500 plant taxa, of which 13,000 are endemic. This map basically shows the three major hotspots of our country, the Cape Floristic region, the Fynbos region, having just over 6,200 plants that are endemic. The Maputo Ponderland Center of Endemism has just under 2,000 endemics, and the succulent Karoo has 2,500 endemics. Our country has 6% of the world plants and the world's richest temperate flora. Our government is responsible for biodiversity conservation, and SANBI is part of the Department of Environmental Affairs, whose mandate is to conserve our biodiversity. We're also very fortunate to have a 100-year NGO dedicated to plant conservation, and that's the Botanical Society. Moving on to the global strategy for plant conservation, so SANBI is the designated focal point for the strategy for plant conservation, and we've developed the response to the global plant conservation strategy in 2006. We've then realized that the strategy has required a lot of focus. We've had a lot of gap areas. Thus, we partnered with the Botanical Society to provide the foundation to work with all botanical conservation stakeholders to produce the strategy. The strategy, although led by Department of Environmental Affairs and the SANBI, as well as the Botanical Society, we engaged with 4 national government departments. We involved national parks and provincial conservation agencies, as well as academic institutions and NGOs that play a huge role in plant conservation. So the strategy has 5 objectives, which I'll take you through, and these outline 16 targets that would be implemented by 2020. Each target includes background on the work done to date, prioritizes key areas for work needed, identifies 2 to 3 major outcomes for 2020, has a work plan with actions, timeframes, and responsible stakeholders, and all of this makes the strategy achievable. So on now to the objectives, and the first objective is plant diversity is well understood, documented, and recognized, of which the first target is an online flora for all known plants. And this is done by SANBI's eFlora of South Africa project, whereby we're documenting all of our flora journals and literature so that it feeds into the International Flora Online project. The second target is an up-to-date assessment on the conservation status of all South African species. And this is a picture of the Red List website for South African plants, which is updated annually. This data then feeds into reporting the state of our environment nationally, so it's part of SANBI's mandate, as well as internationally, as we are signatory to the CBD. The Red List data also informs, spatial data also informs spatial development plans that each province as well as municipalities have to undertake, and we inform the protected area expansion strategy. So on to target 3, information, research, and associated outputs and methods necessary to implement the strategy developed and shared. And this is broken down into 2. The first is having all our herbaria digitized. Thus far, it's only the Pretoria Herbarium, which is our national herbarium, that's 98% digitized. And we're working on digitizing the various other herbaria across the country. The second is to address the lack of biodiversity data in key areas. And this is the Karoo BioGaps project, which is filling in the information gaps in the Karoo region. The map shows the area of our focus, and the data collected is going to integrate and upgrade our existing data. We're conducting detailed surveys for 11 representative taxonomic groups in areas targeted for shale gas exploration. And our logo there shows the different taxonomic groups that we are working with. And we use this data for monitoring long-term effects of shale gas extraction. This project is together with the NRF National Research Foundation funding. And this map is from iSpot, and just a show of hands, who's used iSpot? The app. Fantastic. Okay, so BioGaps is a project on iSpot, and that's our focus area once again. The numbers represents the number of observations uploaded for those specific areas. And these are all uploaded by citizen scientists. To date, we've got just over 4,000 observations, and this project was only initiated at the beginning of this year onto iSpot. So that's quite a lot of observations, and we're lucky to have higher accuracy owing to each taxon lead identifying these observations. So just briefly on iSpot, we have over 4,000 users, 290,000 observations, 95% identified, and over 1,200 projects. So iSpot is run by SANBI, but we did obtain licenses from the Open Science Lab based in the UK. So objective 2, plant diversity is urgently and effectively conserved. And this is broken down into ecosystem level as well as species level. So target 4 is biodiversity targets for terrestrial ecosystems secured through effective management. Target 5, important areas for plant diversity identified and incorporated into conservation processes. And here you can see it's picking out specific highly threatened species, plant species that occur in very small habitats. And target 6 is based around initiatives in place to ensure the sustainable management of production lands consistent with the conservation of plant diversity. Moving on to the species level of this objective, target 7 is around conserving at least 75% of threatened plants in situ, and at least 60% of our threatened plants are conserved ex situ and are available for restoration programs. Target 9 is a genetic diversity of crops, including their wild relatives and indigenous edible plant species conserved. And this is just a short project that we did over the past 2 years. Target 10 is effective management plans in place to prevent new biological invasions and to manage important areas for plant diversity that are invaded. On to objective 3, plant diversity is used in a sustainable and equitable manner. Target 11 is the number of species of wild flora endangered by no species of wild flora endangered by international trade. Target 12, all wild harvested plant-based products sourced sustainably. And target 13, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's around indigenous and local knowledge, innovations, and practices associated with plant resources maintained or increased as appropriate. Over on to objective 4, around education and awareness about plant diversity, its role in sustainable livelihoods, and importance to all life on Earth is promoted, of which there are 2 targets. The first, target 14, the importance of plant diversity and the need for its conservation incorporated into communication, education, and public awareness programs. So we reach out to school learners and we expose them to the importance of plants by linking to cultural uses and the school curriculum, as well as training at university levels on threatened plant ecology and monitoring, and also showcase how red list assessments are done. Objective 5 is the capacity and public engagement necessary to implement the strategy being developed. And here we have a number of trained people working in appropriate facilities, sufficient according to national needs to achieve the strategy. And thus far we've trained various interns, and this slide just shows individuals that had just matric level education, and we brought them through the system via the Karoo Sewenza project. For 2 years they were upskilled, and 3 of which are now employed within the conservation sector. This slide, our graduates that we've employed via Karoo Sewenza and the National Research Fund, again, all of which are employed. Davidine on the far right is now the National Red List Scientist. Shlengiwe here is the Red List Scientist for KZN, as well as the Karoo Program Coordinator. Mashlatse at the bottom is the botanist for Ledet, Limpopo Provincial Government. And Mbali is taxon researcher in Pretoria in the invasive species program. And Kavisha is now the project assistant for the Karoo program. And for further information on the plant conservation strategy, it's available online on the Biodiversity Advisor website. Thank you.